Hello everyone, and welcome to Fluffy Reviews, Unhack. Developed by Invert Mouse Games, Unhack touts itself as a visual novel cross-puzzle game hybrid. The game has seen 2 editions, the latter of which contained voiceovers and improved artwork. The Unhack project started in early 2013 and took just under a year to complete, with the revised version being released in early 2014. So as always, before I start the review, the categories and the points they are worth are as follows. Category number 1 is Sensory Appeal, worth 1 point. Category number 2 is Controls, worth 1 point. Category number 3 is the story, worth 3 points, and gameplay is the final category, worth 5 points. So let's not waste any more time and start off with the Controls category, shall we? Unhack is a very simple game when it comes to controlling it. You control with the WSAD keys or the mouse, moving yourself from one adjacent slot to the other by using the WSAD keys or using the mouse to click on the adjacent slot. The mouse is also used to progress and rewind dialogue. Obviously, with such simplicity, it would make sense that there wouldn't be much to say about it, but I actually do have one little criticism. For whatever reason, the control inputs are buffered, so you can input several commands while you're in transit from one slot to another and the game will register each command. It's nothing really to complain about so long as you aren't mashing keys, but it's a little strange that the inputs get saved between your movements. It would have been better if the inputs didn't register until you finished your movement. Other than that, there's nothing else to say as the controls are fully functional and respond accurately. Controls get a 0.9 out of 1. Now let's move on to the Sensory Appeal category. Considering that Unhack touts itself as partially a visual novel, I must say that there is very little in the way of visuals when it comes to Unhack. The background is virtually unchanging from its purple hexagon pattern, and the only thing besides the pathways on the screen is the AI characters and their various poses and facial expressions. Because of the way the story is, several story elements are made extremely unclear by the lack of visuals before you start a mission. I would have loved some more background images explaining the location of the Unhacker being the protagonist of the story, in different locations to explain how he's able to interact with his AI companions. This dips into the story category as well, but to say the least, the lack of visuals in this sense made some story elements extremely confusing. Credit should be given to the artists of the AI characters, however, as they are extremely well drawn and it's very clear which emotions the characters are feeling by looking at their sprites. On to the other sense appeal category though, I have to question the sound design a little bit. The music tracks themselves, while nothing special, are well made, though a bit repetitive in nature at times. There isn't a lot of variation in the tracks either, but there's enough variety to not address this lazy sound design. The tracks also lack a permanent loop, as once the track finishes, it fades out then fades right back in, rather than just looping for eternity. It's not the worst thing ever, as I have actually heard the click of tracks ending in games before as they loop, but the lack of a permanent loop in the sound design is noticeable for sure. The voice acting isn't anything special. The voices themselves are fine, and it has several well-delivered lines, but mostly you won't hear anything too outstanding from the voice acting. And quite honestly, it feels dull a portion of the time. Even with that said though, the voices fit the AI's personalities just fine, so no complaints on that regard. With all that said, the Sensory Appeal category gets a 0.5 out of 1. Now let's move on to the Story category. Unhack follows the story of the Unhacker, the unnamed, unvoiced protagonist. The Unhacker is an employee of Smash Security, a company dedicated to protecting clients from a virus known as the 5K worm. The story follows the Unhacker and his AI companions as they attempt to find the source of the 5K worm and eradicate it. Unhack's story was well written enough, and it had dialogue that gave me a chuckle or two every now and then. It had good pacing, and overall nice interactions between the characters, which is pretty much 99% of the dialogue. There are some things within the writing I don't like, however, one of which being the emoticons. I get that the Unhacker is supposed to be typing to his AI companions, but the emoticons feel and look off in a line of dialogue. Luckily, there is an option to turn it off, so that's good. The other problem I have is with questionable word and grammar choices here and there. Most of the grammar choices is parodies of how some internet people talk with their lack thereof of grammar or not wanting to care about it, but sometimes they have these really weird words in there. I mean, yawnies? Really? I suppose you can explain that particular word as being a character quirk, but not only reading it, but hearing it sounds so weird. All the characters themselves have their own unique personalities to them, and each is enjoyable in their own right. However, nobody stands out as being amazing or awful as a character, however, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it causes a lack to be able to gain some form of attachment to the characters through like or hate. Investment into the story and characters is going to take a different person than I, since I failed to become very invested in the story at all. It wasn't awful by any means, but I never felt it was one that could suck you in. This might be in part due to the game's short length, but I don't feel that was the entirety of the reason. Overall though, I give Unhack's story a 2 out of 3. And finally, let's move on to the gameplay category. Unhack's gameplay revolves around moving from slot to slot, navigating through different obstacles hindering your progress. Nothing too fancy. As you move onward, you'll eventually run over different slots that have different functions. Slots that seem hollow are story slots and give dialogue from one of the characters. There are always a few of these in a row or close to one another, creating conversations normally between the unhacker and the AI currently on the screen. Slots that have flags on them are safe slots. If you happen to get hit by an obstacle and die, you will respawn on the last touch flag spot, provided you have enough lives to do so. And lastly, there are slots that have color boxes that look like a key door. To pass through these, you need to find a key that matches the corresponding gold or silver color. Unhack eases you into the game with fairly simple obstacles that are easily avoided and passed through, but as the game goes on, I never felt like I was being challenged much. The game felt too easy and often lacked a lot of planning to be done up until the final mission, which even then didn't have me thinking it through that long. With that being said, I would recommend not playing the game on normal difficulty, as it takes away even more challenge from this already easy game. It takes away so much challenge that you can actually sit still in particular portions of the game, do nothing, and you can still win. Unhack does have a nice variety of different obstacles throughout, and often mixes and matches them in different places to increase the difficulty. Patience is often a virtue in this game, as rushing through will get you killed in most scenarios. Unhack, as mentioned in the story section, is not very long of a game. In total, the 10 missions in the game should take you at most 2 hours to play through, which doesn't sound like much at all, but considering Metal Gear Solid 5 is charging $30 for 2 hours of gameplay, and Unhack's price is $5, I don't think there's much of a reason to complain about its length. I could see replay value for this game being along the same lines as Portal for me, as you can replay it several times just to see how fast you can complete the game itself. As a whole, Unhack delivers a solid enough gameplay experience, but I wish the game itself was longer and had a harder difficulty overall. Gameplay gets a 3.6 out of 5, which of course means the overall rating for Unhack is a 7 out of 10. The game has a few flaws, isn't very long and lacks difficulty throughout, but nonetheless the content you're getting is a decent enough experience overall. Recommending the game to everyone can be a little difficult, even at a $5 price point, but if you enjoy puzzle games and like the idea of a story being a part of it, give this game a purchase for sure. You can find a link for purchasing the game in the description below. As a final note, I would like to thank Inverse Mouse Games for supplying me a copy of the game to review. Hey everyone, and thanks for watching my review of Unhack. There are 2 links on the screen right now. The one on the left goes to my review of Danganronpa, and the one on the right goes to a top 10 video I did on the top 10 best boss battle themes. If you want to click them and go watch those videos, go right ahead. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later, hopefully.